3D printing is able to mass produce hundreds of thousands of parts at a reasonable cost, but in addition to that, it has all kinds of superpowers that can make a part completely new and original compared to anything that the competition might possibly have. Inside of this video, we're going to talk about some of those awesome advantages and how you can actually implement them to help your business produce parts more reliably with mass production 3D printing. So one of the first enormous advantages of 3D printing is just the elimination of tooling. We are descendants from cavemen and we love carving stuff into stone, but is that really the best way to manufacture stuff anymore? Since 3D printing is a digital process that adds material in rather than trying to inject something into a carved out piece of rock, it is much more flexible, so you no longer have that upfront capital expenditure of having to make the tools and the molds, and you never have to worry about them being lost or going out of date as your customer demands change. But this leads into an even greater ability. It's just the fact that sometimes you don't need as many molds. An assembly that might have been a couple or a dozen parts can now be simplified and combined into a part that is only a few. This is done already with aerospace and rocketry, where very complex parts that were hand soldered together and screwed together with thousands or hundreds of pieces are now all just simply printed in one single piece. You can apply those same principles to consumer products, to where you can have what was a very complex and expensive assembly simplified down to a single 3D printed part. And of course, since you no longer have this design carved into stone and it's now one single design rather than dozens, there's less interdependence, so it's much easier to change the design. If your customer demands change or you want to address a different market segment, it's very easy to change the design of a product and move on to a new iteration by basically just uploading a file rather than having to go get new molds made and then have parts shipped across and then hoping you sell out of inventory. Instead, you just update the design the way you would update an app, giving you way more responsiveness to what customers' needs actually are as your business continues to grow and your product continues to evolve. Since 3D printing is a digital process where the files can be emailed around and are less skill dependent than some other processes such as machining, they can be almost literally teleported in between countries. You can mass produce the parts at one print farm in one country, and if you need parts in a different area of the world, you can connect with the print farm there to produce a similar quantity of parts just as reliably and just as quickly. This is why at Slant 3D we are working so hard to build so many extra factories to make sure that we're able to meet that distribution demand across the planet as our customers need the ability to scale. And ultimately, this just lowers shipping cost, because historically you would have a large quantity of parts produced in one country where they had to be shipped across the ocean and then shipped to the distribution centers and then shipped to the ultimate customer. Quite frankly, with 3D printing, you can almost use it as a warehouse where the shelves make the product. You just have a file and a product listing, and then when the order actually comes through, the file is printed and delivered to your customer, radically reducing all of the logistics and shipping cost. But within this whole process, we're ignoring the fact that it is a new process. Why compare it or use what you've been doing with traditional tooling and traditional manufacturing? This is a new process. It enables all types of new capabilities, so you're able to create products that were never possible before. 3D printing allows you to create impossible geometries. You can have internal channels that block light but allow airflow. You can have variable density foams created that are able to respond to particular types of impact and have varying amounts of stiffness depending on where they are on a body or piece of armor. So the possibilities with new products are much wider open because they have not had hundreds or even in some cases thousands of years to be refined. Everybody knows how to make a brick. It's tough to make a new type of brick, but now you have a way to make something that is entirely new and different from what anybody else has done before. And then long term, 3D printing is just a more efficient process. Since it only has the energy and the material going into it in order to create a part, there's much less waste. Whereas with past methods of manufacturing products, you would overproduce in order to make sure that your shelves were ever empty, which often resulted in about 15 to 20% of inventory just simply being thrown away or having to be recycled. Since 3D printing is so much tighter while still having the same scale, you're able to recoup all of that inventory cost and reduce the waste that goes along with it, helping your company be much more environmentally conscious and reducing the cost on the bottom line. And ultimately, and one of the largest ones, is just the reduction in risk. Since there is no longer this tremendous upfront investment in order to get a part manufactured, since 3D printing is a digital process, there's no big tooling setup or no big investment in minimum quantities and inventories. There is simply the upload of a file and then the creation of a product listing, and then that part can be produced on demand and delivered to your customer. And then over time you can scale up. But since it is so easy to get started, there's much less risk in the creation of a new product. Rather than having to swing for the fences and hope that you hit it, now you have the capability to take 100 singles until you find the one thing that the customers actually really enjoy and love, and then scaling up that product as quickly as you can. The same way Google used to change the color of their blue buttons until they found out the one that people clicked on the most. If that button had to be carved out of a rock every time, they probably wouldn't have tried 1,000 different shades of blue before they figured out the one that worked the best. Have a great day, everybody.